there's a new movement that I'm sure many of you are unfamiliar with, and that is the ESG movement. It stands for Economic Social Governance. It's not only harmed our healthcare, public relations, but really our lives in general when it comes full circle. So the ESG essentially grades each company in the S&P with a score from 0 to 100 based on their own values and how they see fit through not only environmental impacts, but just their own narratives itself. So the ESG will grade a company like Tesla a score of 33 out of 100, but will rate something like Marlboro, a cigarette company, an 88 out of 100. Make that make sense. So this ESG, Economic Social Governance movement, is extremely toxic. This movement is a plague in disguise, and many people are still unaware of it, as they mean to keep it this way, because they don't want you to think about this and say, oh, well, this Economic Social Governance group, they're making some pretty strange scores. They're saying some pretty strange things. Now, where did this even start? You gotta think. What company owns a majority of every other company we see in America, including S&P, just regular restaurants? Almost every million and billion-dollar market cap company is owned by Blackrock. Now, Blackrock controls almost every institution. They're essentially the puppeteer of the puppets. Now, when you're able to control that many companies and have that much authority, that's where corruption happens. That's where corruption's born. That's when you should really start to question things and question their credibility. So they're trying to influence economics, the social thoughts, like what you can and can't say, and they also want a corporate governance to tell companies what they can and can't do. And it's all full circle. It's full control, and it's something that's very scary, because where could this lead? I mean, could it lead to less credible companies like we see today? I mean, with the very little credibility we have left, where is that going to sit? What companies will reject this ESG proposal? Which ones will actually, fall into it? We've seen many of them fall into it already. We've seen companies like Target, Walmart, a lot of woke companies, Ben & Jerry's. They've all fallen into this trap, and they are complying with these rules. And it's up to other companies such as Tesla and a lot of the companies that really control the S&P 500 and have a lot of influence to say no to this group and to try to deny everything they can. And it's really interesting. Vivek Ramaswamy, presidential candidate from Cincinnati, Ohio, is actually really against the ESG movement. He's someone that probably has my vote at this point, considering his stance on not only voting on foreign policy and just trying to have a better image of self-identity in the country in general amongst a person. I think that's definitely the guy you want to go with, and he's fighting this ESG movement. We have to find people that are willing to speak up against this corruption. And like I said, when you have the Marlboro, a cigarette company, with a higher score than something like a Tesla, that just shows that something is not right. There's some sort of agenda at play here. When I finally came to this conclusion, I actually stopped investing in the stock market, knowing how corrupted and how manipulated everything is. Even if you trust the CEO, even if you have a little bit of faith, this ESG movement will completely sniff that out and bombard that credibility and that faith you have in that company, because it no longer exists. And that's the reality you have to face. I'll go through each letter of ESG and define clearly what they mean and what initiatives they have and the meaning of what they're trying to accomplish. Now the E, like I said, is economic. Now what they're trying to get there is not only just the flow of money and have money regulated, but they also want to control energy. And when they can control energy, they can basically do anything they want to. So it's not really up to the company, it's up to the puppeteer, like I said, who's controlling the puppet, which is the ESG, Blackrock, State Street, and Vanguard, all those monopolistic corporations. Then you have S, which stands for social. Their objective here is to control what you can and can't say, and your narrative in general. For example, let's just say Elon Musk of Tesla wants to put out and say that if you don't drive a Tesla, then you're hurting the environment. The Economic Social Governance group, they can then say, well, Elon, we don't want you to say that. We have a direct influence and we control a lot of the capital that goes into some of these companies. We're going to tell you you can and can't say that. Now, someone like Elon might not be the best example because He's self-funded, and a lot of his money is made purely through him, and he's not really manipulated by a lot of these companies. They want to control what you see and what you perceive, and by them telling and forcing these companies to oblige to their methods and their set of rules, well, you're pretty much accomplishing that. So moving on to G, which is corporate governance. Now this is the full control of everything here. They want to be able to dictate the political stance, and they want to be able to dictate how you operate in general. My biggest worry for this is that there is not going to be an incentive for entrepreneurs to go out there and start their own business. Not to mention, with the way the economy is, you have this as a factor, the ESG, and these monopolistic parties. How are you supposed to be incentivized to start your own business and live the American dream that so many of us are searching for and have lost that self-purpose? So how are we going to find that when we have that barrier in the way? It's a very interesting question, and it's something we're going to have to figure out as the landscape gets tighter and tighter when it comes to trying to have your own self-sustainable business and being a self-structured individual to be successful in the entrepreneur and corporate world. It's a very slippery slope, and it's something now that's more riskier than anything's ever been. And you have to figure that there's legal issues that go into these things. To owning a business, there's so many other factors. When you add in the ESG movement, it makes it that much harder. So we'll have to see how this plays out with other companies, and will they give into it? Will they back off? Will they fight? It's really a tough question. We're in the early stages of this, and many people don't even know what ESG is. They want to make it a hidden agenda as if it never existed, and it's just something that we're going to be indoctrinated to because we're so used to companies bending over to these set of rules or whatever they tell them to do. But that's where the strong entrepreneurs, the strong-hearted men who are actually about the American dream and see the same thing the founding fathers saw in 1776 when we signed a tax-free nation, and we signed to be independent individuals, sovereign individuals who want to do the right thing and will not take advantage of each other, and to eradicate any tyranny that's bestowed upon the American people. And that's what we see here. So how will we eradicate this tyranny? We don't know. This has never been done in history. We can only react, and we can only either revolt or we can just back off and see how they do it. But I'm on the side that wants to revolt. I'm not going to sit here and let a lot of these large institutions manipulate my life and the way I perceive things. I'm going to stay true to myself. And even as an entrepreneur, I'm not going to let some company or some large industry that's manipulated by Wall Street and the government to tell me how I'm going to operate. No, I'm a free market person, I'm a free individual, and no one is going to tell me how I'm going to operate. And if we all think like this, I think we can defeat these movements and we can make them go bankrupt because they're not going to be useful at all. They're going to be completely tarnished. Other controlling industry, just like the banking sector, just like healthcare, just like all these welfare groups that have done nothing but manipulate the people, which has led us to poverty and manipulated us to a point where we don't even have the ability to think for ourselves. It's an identity crisis. We've lost what it's felt like to be an American. And these movements have done nothing but make it harder and harder as we see countries like China buying physical property and physical land in the United States. How is that fair? How is that something that you would be okay with when other countries and other outside sources or outside influences are practically taking control of your country and doing what our very founding fathers would indefinitely frown on? And I think a lot of this has to go into people like Bill Gates, people who have a large degree of affinity and money, who can pull the strings and get away with it because they're corrupt, they're evil, and they simply want power. That's not every single billionaire, but in this case, I think Bill Gates fits that. So when you hear ESG, look the other way. Don't buy into any of their bullshit. Know that it's a scam, and know they want your attention, they want your money, and they want your compliance. Don't give it to them, and if you see companies give in to them, just stop giving them your business. Simply, just walk away. If they give into these ideologies, simply boycott, just like Bud Light, just like Ben & Jerry's. Boycott these companies and refuse to do business with them, which will lead to their own detriment. They will lose sales, they will lose affinity and influence. And just like that, guess who goes down with them? The ESG, Blackrock, State Street, and Wall Street. As I said before, those three companies make up 88% of the S&P. They're the #1 donor for 88% of those companies. That's just pure monopolistic power. So I wanted to inform everyone about the ESG movement. It's something that we need to be aware of, and we need to take into account and realize that it's already upon us, and it's a plague that's spreading. So be aware and don't give in. Until next time.